The day of the decree. When partition descended with a maddening frenzy, its vehemence dissolved all my visions of a united land that would be severed from the British yoke. I had recently returned from Cambridge armed with the BA degree in law for which I had been strenuously studying for several years, and perhaps even more crucially, with a glowing letter from my tutor, summoning me to his medieval rooms crisscrossed by oak beams in the magnificent great court. Professor Hodgkin put on his black-rimmed spectacles and slowly read out the first line before carefully sealing the pages in a yellow envelope. Mr. Muhammad Yunus is a very enlightened and progressive Muslim who will be another jewel from Trinity College in the glittering crown of His Majesty's colonial service. I had winced in my innermost heart. No matter how hard I had tried to extricate myself from my Muslim roots, I would be stuck to them forever, merely because of the accident of an Arabic appellation. 30 years ago, when my father had moved from a nondescript village of Muslim peasants in northern India to the cosmopolitan highways of Bombay, and managed to rise rapidly through the ranks and marry my mother from Hindu high society, my tryst with destiny had started. I grew up to view as sacred and indeed to worship the whole human race. So difficult it is to love even your own neighbor. So why not start there instead of endlessly postulating and speculating about transcendental entities that we cannot even see or touch? In speech after speech at the Cambridge Majlis, I exhorted my Hindu and Muslim audiences to move away from their obsession with dogma and doctrine and instead surrender themselves wholeheartedly to the service of their brethren groaning under the British burden. Somewhat unwittingly, I found myself at the epicenter of a small band of dreamers. We wrote countless poems and plays as we boldly gestured towards the advent of the new world order that we would recreate through our heroic labors. We furiously debated the state of affairs in Italy, Russia, Germany, South Africa, Tanzania, and Mexico into the wee hours of the morning. And the undying light in our sleepless eyes gently merged with the orange hues of the dawn. The sky was never so blue, the air was never so exhilarating, the meadows were never so verdant, and our hearts were never so vitally enriched with warm blood. We would become the fiery crucible within which the accumulated dross of the ancient times would be burnt away. We would emerge as the indomitable vanguard, triumphantly ushering in the new eon. All those dreams lay in tatters just a week before independence. I was about to go down to the corner shop when my kindly Hindu landlady stopped me. My son, you can't go out like that. No, 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 not with that beard. Oh, you should not worry, I hastened to explain. This beard means nothing to me. Very well, my son, get rid of it then. And thus it was that I, who had always stepped away in England from the parks of my forefathers from Arabia, was compelled to make in Hindustan an explicit declaration of my departure. For 7 days and for 7 nights, the rioting, the burning, and the looting continued. Suddenly I found myself locked into the merciless coldness of an unsurpassable black hole. All poetry seemed hollow. The light had gone out from my life. Lyrics of brotherhood and love were a cruel sham. My desire for rebellion had withered away, and the strings of hope had been cruelly dissected. For so long we had resisted British brutality in the fields, on the streets, on the beaches, and on the islands of the Andaman. Who would have thought that the real enemy, like a raw, festering wound, was lurking inside our own homes and our own backyards? One evening, my landlady came knocking at my door to say that some fresh supplies had arrived. Ravaged by hunger, I stealthily crept out into the streets shrouded by a deathly silence. The air was so thick with death that I felt that I was an ethereal zombie who had been cruelly exiled to the land of the living. At the very end of a cul-de-sac, I saw the glimmering light of the corner shop. As I was rushing back with some bread, I suddenly saw an elderly man who was shivering on the roadside. He looked at me with plaintive eyes and then pointed weakly at the food in my hands. Suddenly, I blurted out, "Are you a Hindu or a Muslim?" He opened his mouth and pointed inside. Somewhat reluctantly, I handed the bread over to him and he gobbled it at once. The next day, as the hours passed by in an intense haze of hunger, I tightened the leather belt around my stomach by another inch. Every breath I drew in seemed to be my last. When I woke up, the shadows of the dusk were falling thick and fast inside my cold room. Through the window, I faintly heard the muezzin's call to prayer. I painfully rose to my feet. Struggling not to lose my balance, I weakly bent my head in the direction of the mosque. Something deep inside me, perhaps discordant fragments of my wayward soul, had finally come home. That was my first day of Ramzan.